Breaking tonight, 24 hours after the political showdown of, well, a century. The numbers are in with a record-breaking 84 million people tuning in to watch Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. The question now, who won with the voters? Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Today, the pundits were in full spin mode, each suggesting their respective nominee had won the big debate. As for the candidates, they were back on the campaign trail in key battleground states. Mrs. Clinton in North Carolina, Mr. Trump in Florida. Remember, there are just 42 days until Election Day. Can you believe it? 6 weeks to go. And only 2 more opportunities for these 2 candidates to debate each other. Take a listen to a little of what the candidates had to say today.
Well, we had a great time last night. One of my favorite baseball players growing up, Ernie Banks, used to get so excited about going to play that he'd say, let's play too. So I'm looking forward to the next debate and then the one after that.
Did anybody see that debate last night? Oh, yes. 1 down, 2 to go.
Last night was very exciting, and almost every single poll had us winning the debate against crooked Hillary Clinton. Big league. For 90 minutes, she argued against change, while I called for dramatic change. We have to have dramatic change. We have to get rid of Obamacare. We have to strengthen up our depleted military.
In moments, we'll be joined by President Obama's 2008 campaign manager, David Plouffe, and by former Reagan Education Secretary Bill Bennett. But we begin tonight with our chief political correspondent, campaign Carl Cameron, who's reporting tonight from Melbourne, Florida, where Mr. Trump just wrapped up a rally. Carl?
Hi, Megyn, and it doesn't look like it now, but there were 9,000 people in this airport hangar in Orlando just an hour ago and another 6,500 outside, and that's according to police. Donald Trump knew he had a good night last night. He was pleased by it. Hillary Clinton did, too. Last night, after the actual debate in the spin room, Mr. Trump was talking about how he had problems with his mic and it kept on cutting out. This morning, Hillary Clinton said, if you're blaming the mic, you got a problem. But Trump is definitely high on those snap polls, the ones overnight. We'll get a better feel for who gets a bounce out of this probably by the end of the week when more lengthy taken polls will begin to come out. But Trump was on fire tonight. Watch.
Last night, I talked about how we have the worst so-called recovery since the Great Depression. The American people rendered their verdict. The post-debate polls, as I said to you, were so great. But we exposed Hillary Clinton's real position on NAFTA and Trans-Pacific Partnership, another disaster that she lied about. She called it the gold standard.
That was one of the things on which Trump scored points last night. And the campaign's riding pretty high on the idea that one of the things that they've been looking over the results and the analysis of the debate last night that they really hit well with was the assertion that for the last 26 or 30 years, in his words, Hillary Clinton has been in Washington and been involved in politics and gotten nothing done. Expect to hear a lot of that in the next few days. They think that that was a winning line last night, and they tend to keep on ringing the bell. Megyn.
Carl, thanks. So what are the big takeaways from last night's event? David Plouffe served as President Obama's 2008 campaign manager and later as a senior advisor to President Obama. He's with me now. Great to see you, David. So what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, the debate really was about, for Hillary Clinton, I think, trying to win undecided voters as it was for Donald Trump, and I think she needed to provide more enthusiasm for the so-called Obama coalition. I think she did those things. I mean, the first 15 minutes or so, I think, were fine for Trump. After that, it was a disaster. I mean, I've been through good debates and bad debates. The question for me really
And
is,
you're open about the fact that Barack Obama had a very bad debate,
yes,
that first debate against Romney.
And we were honest about that externally and internally. By the way, the Bush campaign was in 2004, too, when they had their first bad debate with Kerry. The thing I'd worry about if I'm a Republican is if Trump actually believes he did well and is not going to adjust. And if he brings into that town hall meeting what he did here in New York, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, it was one of the worst debates I think a major party nominee has had, and really raised questions about his fitness and his temperament. Oddly, he talked about that. And there's also a lot of things coming out of the debate. Alicia Machado, him saying it's smart not to pay taxes.
Miss Universe.
Right. His Iraq craziness about call Sean Hannity and confirm I was against it. So there was a lot of things that will live on in the next couple of weeks.
So who was the target? So she needed to energize her base, but who was the target? Like, who were they both fighting over in that debate?
Well, I think there are undecided voters, true undecided voters, And I think it's hard I don't think Trump lost any vote last night, but he's in a position in the race where he has to add vote. So I think undecided voters, they're not all going to make the decision overnight, but I think she solidified and helped herself. Then she's also got, younger voters that might be thinking about Gary Johnson. It's very important that she converts some of those.
Here's what Newt Gingrich came, a big, surrogate for Trump. He came out and said he's sickened by the intellectual dishonesty, arrogance, and smugness of the so-called intellectual yet idiots. Talking about how she's got this Ivy League polish and arrogance with smoothness, but he's the one who appeals to real people who are out there suffering. Is there any truth to that?
I mean, that's just a bizarre statement. Newt's off his rocker. I generally respect what he has to say. So, listen, Trump's going to get 42, 43, 44. Or any Republican nominee is going to get that. The problem is, to win the presidency, maybe in this election you only need to get the 48, let's say, in battleground states, because the third parties are going to get some vote. No, absolutely not. And his 30-year thing, I'm sure that'll be part of the next debate. I'd put her record up, Secretary of State, Senator, First Lady of Arkansas and of the country, versus what I think she exposed last night, not paying taxes. I mean, he basically admitted he doesn't pay taxes.
Well, certainly for those 2 years that wound up in that one publicly released audit.
Pretty proud of his smart approach on taxes.
How smart it was. But I have to ask you this, because we've been watching the polls, as I know you have,
right.
And although David doesn't pay as much attention to these polls that we all look at, he looks at some other secret information that we don't have access to. And it's been seriously tightening. I mean, in Colorado, the CNN poll yesterday shows he's at 42, she's at 41. She had an 11-point lead on him. Pennsylvania, she's at 45, he's at 44. She had an 11-point lead there. And so it really looks like this race is tightening and could swing his way in the last 6 weeks, no?
Well, I think, first of all, there's going to be a poll every day for whatever your view on the race is. I mean, there was a national poll by NBC yesterday that had her up 7 nationally, which is the margin we beat McCain by. So none of these polls look at 100% of the vote that's going to happen on Election Day. And when you look at that, I think she's got more to gain. I think she'll do better with undecideds. She'll pull off some of the Johnson-Stein vote. And I think Trump's coming up against a ceiling. So a poll that says something's 42-40, even if it's right, even if that's the firm choice, what about the other 18? So most of the polls this time, after the first debate in 2012, had Romney winning nationally, had the states tightening. But what we were able to see through good data and good analytics was a presidential year turnout very much to our liking. So I think she's got a decisive edge in the Electoral College. Pennsylvania, to me, you don't even need to look at analytics. She's going to have too big a margin coming out of Philadelphia and the surrounding suburban counties for him to make that up.
You say no way does he win Pennsylvania?
No way.
Wow. How about Florida?
I think she's got the edge in Florida, the edge in North Carolina, edge in New Hampshire, edge in Nevada. I think she's going to win Ohio and Iowa too, but those are the two where Trump's doing the best. There's no question about that. And I think they're.
What do you put the odds now of a Hillary Clinton victory at?
I say 100%, which I know people think is crazy, but I've been through this a couple times, and you look at how do you get to 270 electoral votes. The other thing I'd say, it's going to sound partisan, but this is what I believe. The quality of the candidate matters. This is not someone, I think, who's got the temperament or the fitness for office to get a winning number in a presidential race. He's got passionate supporters, and that's important, but he doesn't have the ability because the quality of the candidate. Listen, Hillary Clinton has her challenges as a candidate. There's no question about that. Her favorable numbers aren't where we like. The passion isn't quite where we like yet. But when you compare the two of them, and I think that's what came away last night, was somebody, even if you don't agree with much of what she said, seemed presidential throughout the whole debate, and Trump, particularly in the latter half of the debate, became a little bit unhinged and unmoored.
You're going to be hearing from some of those passionate supporters on Twitter in 5, 4.
It's always a joy.
It's a joy having you here. Thanks for coming. Well, David mentioned Alicia Machado. She's the former Miss Universe who is now in this Hillary Clinton ad, who Trump allegedly called Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping. She's a Latina. We're going to speak with her shortly. But joining us now, Bill Bennett, Secretary of Education under President Reagan and the Chairman of Conservative Leaders for Education. Bill, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Let me just, I'll serve you up what David Plouffe said and let you take a crack at that. What did you think?
Well, 100% chance to win. That's pretty good. You know, as a guy who used to make bets, those are pretty good odds. And I watched the business with Hillary there at the beginning of the show, Megyn. Looks like a little bit of overconfidence, 100%, and bring on the debates. It's a Greek word called hubris. Be careful there with that overconfidence before you enter into the next debates. You're right. This is a very tight race. The debate was very interesting, very engaging. Trump needs to make some adjustments. And he lost some opportunities. He missed some opportunities. You know, when you're asked a question about cybersecurity, You know, he's just got to say it begins at home, Hillary, and then other things that he needs to bring up. But I think what people saw was passion about changing the country, a sense of earnestness about the country and where it is, and I think that spoke to a lot of people. I want to know, even David Plouffe, 100% Plouffe, I'm going to call him now. I used to call him Uber Plouffe, but now I'll call him 100% Plouffe. Conceded that the first couple of rounds went to Donald Trump. Now, what was he talking about? He was talking about jobs and the economy. What are people talking about, worrying about in Ohio and Pennsylvania and all those states which Plouffe said are easily going to
he's saying
Hillary?
that Trump's got a very good chance in Ohio, but he's saying Pennsylvania is a dream. It's never going to happen because of the turnout in Philadelphia, which will be almost all Democratic.
Sure. Right, but what do the numbers say? And where have the numbers been going?
But that's what he does. And just so the audience knows, that's what David does, is he analyzes numbers. That's how I've known him for years, that he says this is how they got Barack Obama elected, by just looking at the raw data.
Yeah, no, and he's good at it, and he's a very good analyst, but I would have to say he's a partisan, too.
Yes.
And he does have to account for the fact that the gap in Pennsylvania has been narrowed to 1 point or no points from 10 points. We see which way the arc is going. I think with a couple of adjustments by Donald Trump, he'll do better. Now let's look at the Hillary.
What should he do specifically, Bill? How can he improve?
Well, not a metamorphosis, because he's about 69, 70 years old. He's not going to change fundamentally. But I think a few words in his head, like Syrian refugees, the wall, immigration, email, and how about the stuff she said last night? We all have a bigotry problem. We all have this problem.
We're getting to
that.
My
gosh almighty, I know you will. And what about releasing these people from prison, all this this criminal justice reform? People need to take a look at the drug dealers, big-time dealers they're releasing from
Let
prison.
me ask you this, because his defenders say, and I get this, they say, you know, the people who are suffering in Ohio, in Michigan, and elsewhere, they don't give two figs about Trump eloquently making the argument. They know who their guy is. So
that's right.
If you accept that, who are these debates for? I mean, who's at stake?
I don't care. Yeah, well, they are certainly for undecideds, and they're to assure the base and to bring the base out. But I do think it matters when you say things that resonate with the base. And I think he said some things last night that do. Again, on jobs and the economy. And it's not just Ohio. It's Pennsylvania as well, and other states. So I think that's important. And he got her, I think, a couple of good times on her record. Just exactly what is she offering this country? What you saw in him, I think, was a lot of passion, a lot of worry about where the country is and where it should be going. And he matches the national mood much better than she does. One thing David Plouffe did not talk about is right direction, wrong direction. That's a very big point. You know, that's another phrase he could bring up.
He had her on the ropes on TPP. There was no question. He had her record. On that one, he had done his homework.
Yes.
He had her record. She denied it, but the facts are there. We're going to get into that in just a bit as well. Bill, always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Megyn.
42 days to go. 6 weeks exactly until Election Day. Gosh, it feels like it's been a long time. And with the candidates in a dead heat, Larry Sabato is next with what to look for in the polls that are going to be coming out of this debate. Plus, critics today accusing Lester Holt of being harder on Trump than he was on Mrs. Clinton. You can't win. You can't win as the debate moderator. We'll take a look at the evidence with Brent Brazell and Crystal Ball next. And then we'll speak with the woman at the center of one of the hottest controversies to come out of last night. Alicia Machado, the former Miss Universe, joins us to detail what she says really happened between her and Mr. Trump in the wake of a Miss Universe pageant. And then Katrina Pearson will respond. Stay tuned.
There were two ways, termination or working with her. We want to work with her.
6 weeks from right now, we'll be sitting here together going over who won. How about that? Right. Yes. Yay. Here's to the end of the race. It's coming. And Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are locked in a neck-and-neck race right now, according to polls released just ahead of last night's big showdown. The latest Quinnipiac University poll shows Mrs. Clinton with a 1-point advantage over Trump. Her lead widens to 4 points in Monmouth University's poll, down from, I think, 7 in that one. I'm not sure. Down from 7, yep. With a Bloomberg Politics poll putting Mr. Trump ahead by 2 points. Meanwhile, history suggests a winning first debate performance isn't necessarily a sign of things to come. 2 of the past 3 losing presidential candidates saw a bump in the polls after their first debate, but ultimately went on to lose in November. Joining me now, Larry Sabato, founder and director of the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. Larry, great to see you. So,
good evening, Megyn.
Okay, so is there anything we need to know about that? The fact that you've got John Kerry, who erased a 7 percentage point deficit with a great first debate, lost the election by 2.5 points. Mitt Romney erased a 4 percentage point deficit, lost the election by about 4 points.
Well, 2 points. There's a reason why we have 3 debates. You know, we just had part 1. We've got part 2 and part 3. I leave aside the vice presidential debate for the moment. So the storyline can change, and the candidates can improve their performance or deteriorate depending on what they have learned from the first debate. And the other thing, Megyn, that I think is very, very important, there are fundamentals in any election that probably matter more than the debate. The thing that helps Donald Trump the most and has helped him all year long is he's the change agent. We've had 2 terms of one party, and in modern times, we like to switch parties after 8 years. That's what, in part, has propelled Trump forward. Notice how much he tried to make Hillary Clinton the status quo candidate. She fought back, trying to make the issue Donald Trump. And we'll see in the next 2 debates.
Let me ask you, because you're a numbers guy, too. What did you make of David Plouffe's analysis on Pennsylvania? I mean, he just thinks that is an impossibility for Donald Trump.
I never say anything's impossible. I'm a lot older than David Plouffe. That's why I never say anything's impossible. And at 100% chance that Hillary Clinton's elected, you know, God bless him. I wouldn't want to risk all my savings on one particular election result. Look, is Pennsylvania tough for Republicans? Of course. They haven't carried it since 1988.
I know, but it's
knows
within
that.
a point. I mean, that's what's incredible.
Yeah, well, that's one poll. That's one poll. The polling averages are about 3. But look, it can change overnight. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's tough. I certainly wouldn't say it's impossible.
Larry, a pleasure. To be continued.
Thank you, Megyn.
Well, as we track the fallout from last night's debate, one of the big stories involved the moderator. What a shock. The moderator is getting beaten up again. NBC's Lester Holt in this case. Some debate watchers are suggesting that Holt pressed Mr. Trump harder than he did Mrs. Clinton. And here is a little of what they are pointing to.
The IRS says an audit of your taxes, you're perfectly free to release your taxes during an audit. Mr. Trump, for 5 years, you perpetuated a false claim that the nation's first black president was not a natural-born citizen. Can you tell us what took you so long?
I'll tell you.
We're talking about racial healing in this segment. What do you say to Americans?
Well, it was I say nothing.
Color? Mr. Trump, a lot of these are judgment questions. You had supported the war in Iraq before the invasion.
Wait a minute. I was against the war in Iraq, just so you put it out.
The record shows otherwise.
Joining me now, Brent Bizzell, president of the Media Research Center, and Crystal Ball, senior media fellow at the New Leaders Council. All right, good to see you both. So, Brent, I confess, I've already said I thought he did a good job, so I'm not going to argue against you. But I'm going to give you the floor to make the case about why you think, you know, he pressed Trump. All those questions seem fair to me. Is the argument solely that he didn't do it as aggressively with Mrs. Clinton?
No, the argument is that he didn't do it at all. Here are the facts, and the facts are irrefutable. He asked Donald Trump about his personal taxes. He challenged him. He asked him about stop and frisk. He challenged him. And by the way, that was a Candy Crowley moment where he got it wrong. He asked him about the birther issue. He challenged him. He asked him about Iran, about Iraq, and he questioned, interrupted him, fact-checked him 5 or 6 different times. Now, that's perfectly fine by me, provided you do the same thing with the other side. What are the facts? He not once challenged Hillary Clinton on anything, not once asked her a tough question, and didn't even ask her anything about her controversies. Now, Megyn, let's be objective here. Let's try to be objective.
He asked her about the email.
Anyway.
He asked her about. He didn't put it in his own words, but he gave her the chance to respond to emails.
Exactly. Way different. Way different. He didn't challenge her on emails. He gave her the opportunity.
Let me explain what I have no idea. I haven't talked to Lester, but this is what I think happened there. You got a question on emails. Of course, he must have had a question on emails for her. So you're going to get to emails with Hillary Clinton. When Donald Trump brings it up, you can just save your question. You can save the 25 extra seconds it would have taken you to read your question and just say, hey, Mrs. Clinton, respond on emails.
Okay, but Megyn, then where's the fact-checking? Where's the follow-up? There was a follow-up to everything Donald Trump said. Where was the follow-up on this? She didn't. What was more important, Megyn? Birther issues or Benghazi medical records, the Clinton Foundation? I mean, there's so much, the emails. What's more important? How could he not have asked these questions?
Okay, Crystal?
Well, apparently, Donald Trump, who his campaign manager called the Babe Ruth of debating, the master showman, cannot handle Lester Holt. I mean, there's a big difference between the questions being unfair and the candidate being unable to handle the questions, which is what happened here. I mean, if you look at the first half of the debate, Lester basically let both candidates go, let them make their points, let them go at each other. But when you have one candidate, and this is not my opinion, this is the opinion of independent fact checkers, both about last night's debate and overall in this campaign, saying that one candidate lies disproportionately more than the other candidate, of course you're going to have more pushback. Of course you're going to have more fact checking. The other thing I'd point out here, at times Trump wouldn't even let Lester Holt get his whole question out. So that led to these contentious exchanges because Trump was not only interrupting Hillary Clinton aggressively, he was interrupting the moderator
But there were definitely some moments where Lester was pressing, like Trump didn't answer the question, and Lester was following up saying, you know, if you could just answer the question that I asked. But But there is an issue about whether some of her controversies were left untouched, whereas more of his were hit upon. I think Brent, the Lester's defenders would say, Trump has so many. There's so many to pick from.
Well, here's something I want to put before your audience, and you tell me which one's right. Robbie Mook, the presidential campaign manager for Hillary Clinton, was working the refs this weekend, as well he should, calling on Lester Holt to be the traffic cop, to be the fact checker. This is what Janet Brown also said. She's the executive director of the Commission on Presidential Debates. This is what she said about fact checking this weekend. I don't think it's a good idea to get the moderator into essentially serving as the Encyclopedia Britannica. So, who did Lester Holt listen to, her or Hillary campaign's campaign manager?
He didn't really do a lot of fact checking. He pushed back on the Iraq war thing.
He was very restrained.
You know, if you really wanted to do it, trust me, because I love to fact check. If you really wanted to do it, I mean, you could get up there, but, you know, it's not, though, especially the general election presidential debates when there's just 2-on-2, it's like, just fade away. It's like, I'm not even here. Say, I'm gone. I'm out. Look, the camera's following me. It's hard to do on my own show. I got to go. Great debate. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks, Megyn.
They can find me wherever I go. New reaction tonight to one of the debate's hottest moments. Hillary Clinton calling out Trump for his treatment of Miss Universe Alicia Machado. The former Miss Universe joins the Kelly file next, and then Katrina Pearson will respond with the latest from Trump's inner circle. Plus, wait till you hear former presidential candidate Howard Dean's theory about Donald Trump's performance in last night's debate, as he suggests the GOP nominee, a family man who does not drink, does not take in caffeine, may have been on drugs. Developing tonight, new reaction to one of the debate's hottest moments. Hillary Clinton taking aim at Donald Trump's history with women and how he treated the former Miss Universe, Alicia Machado, during the Latina star's very public struggle with weight gain. Watch.
One of the worst things he said was about a woman in a beauty contest. He loves beauty contests, supporting them and hanging around them. And he called this woman Miss Piggy. Then he called her Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Donald, she has a name.
Where did you find
her
this?
name
Where
is
did you find
Alicia
this?
Machado.
Where did you find it?
The former Miss Universe is here. She says Donald Trump made her life miserable. We'll ask her about that. But first, Trace Gallagher has the latest. Trace?
Megyn, Donald Trump bought the Miss Universe pageant in 1996. Alicia Machado was his first winner, and Trump acknowledges pressuring her to lose weight, saying it was her job to remain in peak physical shape. But Machado accuses Trump of humiliating her, as you heard, calling her Miss Piggy, and because of her Latin heritage, Miss Housekeeping. Hillary Clinton is now using Machado's story in a new Spanish-language ad. In it, Machado recounts how Donald Trump once made her feel like a lab rat by inviting dozens of reporters and photographers who watched the, quote, fat Miss Universe work out. Machado says she joined Hillary Clinton's supporters earlier this year because she's frightened by the thought of a Trump presidency, describing the GOP nominee as a man filled with grudges, racism, and anger, and blaming him for contributing to her 5-year struggle with bulimia and anorexia. But the former Miss Universe also admits that during her reign, she became hard to work with and refused to do some promotional appearances. Today on Fox and Friends, Donald Trump said this.
That person was a Miss Universe person, and she was the worst we ever had. The worst, the absolute worst. She was impossible. And she was a Miss Universe contestant and ultimately a winner who they had a tremendously difficult time with as Miss Universe. She was the winner, and she gained a massive amount of weight, and it was a real problem.
Machado, who's from an influential and politically engaged family in Venezuela, is now a naturalized U.S. citizen. She is also a well-known Spanish and English language actress, which is bad for Trump because it means this story is playing big in both Spanish and English media. The Trump campaign calls Machado's accusations baseless and part of a smear campaign. Megyn.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now, the former Miss Universe and now Hillary Clinton supporter, Alicia Machado. Alicia, thank you so much for being with us tonight. So the Trump campaign can't really deny that he harassed you over your weight because it's on camera many times. They seem to be denying the specific charges Hillary leveled, which is the language of Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping. Was anybody there to witness when he said those things to you?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to give it to me this space and to share my story with Mr. Trump. Then this happened 20 years ago. And, I don't need to share this story if I don't believe that person is not the right person than being a president or trying to be a president. This happened 20 years ago. In that moment, he was not the person that you can see now. Maybe he was more just a business guy. And I was a little girl too, with 18 years old. And the only thing I want to do is to share my story. I think in this moment, just for my community. I'm a Latina. I'm from Venezuela, and and Cuba. And I need to share my story. I think I can open a few eyes. I can maybe change a few minds. Then, I don't think this person is the right person then can be a president.
You said as a result of what he said to you, you developed an eating disorder, bulimia, and anorexia. But you had said publicly at the time that you suffered from both of those eating disorders prior to the Miss Universe contest and really, had come into...
No, never. Prior than Miss Universe pageant, I never.
Well, this is from May.
Any problem before the Miss Universe.
Well, this is from Washington Post. That
happened.
Let me just tell you. Well, let me just tell you what I'm referring to, and then you respond. The Washington Post from May 16th, 1997, reported this quote from you. I was anorexic and bulimic, but almost all of us are. When I was preparing for Miss Universe, it was an obsession for me to not gain weight. By the time I won, I was actually recovering, but the year leading to it, I didn't eat at all, and whatever I ate, I threw up. I weighed 116 pounds when I won. I was skeletal. So it sounds like, without diminishing anything that you went through after Trump, it does sound like you had an eating disorder prior to his comments and prior to winning, no?
No, I'm sorry, but that was not true. Maybe in that moment, the company, Miss Universe, and in a specific, this person, they manipulate a lot of information about me. I'm here because I know this person and he's not a good person. That is the point. The point is no more abuse for us. No more abuse for the girls. If you gain weight, if you don't look the most beautiful girl in the world, you have your mind, you have your heart, you are strong, you are intelligent. And in the future, that ladies can be a president too. Why not?
Listen, I thank you for your time, and I congratulate you on your American citizenship. All the best to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really proud of that. And, well, you know, we need to change minds and to respect for all the women in this country. That's it.
Take care. Joining me now with more, Trump campaign national spokesperson Katrina Pearson. Kat, good to see you.
Thank you.
Listen, so the only reason I pressed her on her prior statements was because the public's trying to decide now that she's been injected into this campaign whether she is credible, whether they can believe these specific allegations, right? Miss Piggy and in particular Miss Housekeeping, which has a whole different connotation.
Absolutely.
Right? Having said that, there's no question that he really berated her about her weight and was so insensitive about weight, Katrina. And you know there are so millions of Americans out there, and you know that how that makes them feel. So why shouldn't they hold it against him that he was so hard on her when it came to her weight?
Well, I think if we look at the context, we are talking about beauty pageants. These individuals who participate in these contests have a weight clause in their contract. This was not something that Mr. Trump just did. This is organization-wide. We can look at 2011 when Miss San Antonio was told she had to lose weight in order to compete for Miss Texas. There's a reason why Miss Universe 2013 published her diet in Shape magazine.
But you know, he has called some women fat pigs. He's constantly evaluating women based on a number. They're a 7, they're a 10. I mean, he's very into body shape of women.
Well, absolutely. Mr. Trump owned a beauty pageant, and that's where some of that comes from. That is also entertainment. That is also television. When you look at the woman, for example, like his wife and his daughters, they say he treats everyone the same. So we can't just pull out one section of women and say he only does this to women. He will criticize those who criticizes him.
Well, he says you can't be a 10 if you're flat-chested. He hasn't said the equivalent of a man.
Well, I think everyone has their own opinion on what a 10 is, but I will say that this particular charge is extremely important because as you asked her to back up the statement of what she said, did he or did he not, are there any witnesses that can back up your claim of what he said? Because that's really what's catching fire here. As you mentioned, the Miss Housekeeping is what's really bringing on a worse connotation.
Well, but Miss Piggy's bad too, and even this.
But she didn't back any of that up, Megyn.
But here he is. Here's Trump on Stern talking about her. Listen.
You whipped this fat slob into shape. I don't know how you did it. I see all these diet plans, everything else. God bless you. You whipped her into shape, and you held the whole pageant together. Congratulations.
Well, that was an amazing one, Howard.
How did you whip her into shape?
You went from 118 to almost 170.
Yeah. And you got it right down again to 118, didn't you?
Well, she's going to be there. She's probably 145 or something. Right. She gained about 55 pounds in a period of 9 months. She was like an eating machine.
What was she doing?
I guess she ate a lot of everything.
Well, he also said in one of the previous clips that they're showing on television today is, I'm the same way. I like to eat too. This is the context of a beauty pageant, and that's what's getting lost in translation. There is a weight clause. The current Miss Universe, if you go to her Facebook page, there's a ton of posts of her working out in a gym. This is extremely important to those women. But we are talking about things allegedly that Donald Trump said.
Well,
not what he actually said.
A lot of this is on tape.
Well, a lot of that's on tape, but calling her those names, that's not on tape, and there are no witnesses. We need to be focusing on actions like Hillary Clinton and what she did to that 12-year-old little girl that was brutally raped to the point to where she could no longer have children. That is something that's permanent, that sticks with a woman, and she laughed about it.
All right, I got to go. That's a longer story to get into it for another night. Katrina, good to see you.
Thank you.
So a new controversy ignited as former candidate Howard Dean finds a new way to define taking the low road. Plus, Mark Thiessen and Nomiki Konst on Mrs. Clinton's suggestion that the entire country has an issue with race. Developing tonight, are all Americans racist? Most of the media today focused on fact-checking Mr. Trump's remarks on crime rates, while very few outlets took a deeper dive on this from Mrs. Clinton.
Secretary Clinton, last week you said we've got to do everything possible to improve policing, to go right at implicit bias. Do you believe that police are implicitly biased against black people?
Lester, I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, not just police. I think, unfortunately, too many of us in our great country jump to conclusions about each other. And therefore, I think we need all of us to be asking hard questions about, why am I feeling this way?
Mark Thiessen is an American Enterprise Institute scholar and a Fox News contributor. And Megyn Const is a former Bernie Sanders surrogate and host of The Filter on Sirius XM Progress. Mark, what do you make of those comments?
Yeah, I guess we're all deplorable now. Before it was just half of Trump supporters were racist. Now apparently we're all racist. That's Hillary Clinton's ever-expanding world of deplorables. I mean, look, the reality is she was asked on a nationally televised broadcast the question, do you believe police are implicitly biased against black people? The proper answer to that is, of course not. The vast majority of American police officers are good, decent, honorable people who risk their lives to protect us, and they are not racists. She didn't say that. And there's this myth out there, Megyn, that there's been this epidemic of race-based police shootings. It's simply not true. Harvard University had a study this summer that found they looked at over 1,300 police shootings in 10 police districts over 15 years. And you know what they found? Zero race bias in police shootings. In fact, they found police were more likely to fire their weapon when they weren't attacked when the suspect was white. So this idea that somehow the police are out there shooting black people willy-nilly is simply false.
Well, she
should have said so.
She was trying to get it away from just the police, Megyn, because she could smell the danger there. She could sense the danger there, and tried to say it. So she encapsulated everybody, saying, "I believe that implicit bias is a problem for everyone." And there are many people who believe that, who believe we all have some inherent fear of other, whatever the other may be.
Yeah, there's a big difference between bias and racism. Let's make that clear right away. Everybody is inherently biased. There's 88% of Americans. There's a project called the Bias Project, the Inherent Bias Project, and it measured 88% of Americans have some form of implicit bias. But that doesn't mean racism, and that also includes law enforcement. Now, that's a danger zone for her politically because she's trying to appeal to moderates. But the reality is I'll one-up you with a study. UC Davis did a study that showed that unarmed black men are 3.5 times more likely to be shot and killed by police officers than unarmed white men. Not only that, Washington posted a study just this year saying that blacks who are fatally shot are 2 times more likely to be shot even though they're not an imminent threat versus white men who are an imminent threat to the police officers.
So you're saying that the police officers are biased and they are racist
Bias
against black
is different
people,
than racism.
This is the myth that's going out there. It's simply not true that there's an epidemic of race-based shootings going on in the United States of America. And the perfect example of this is what happened in Charlotte recently. The New York Times this morning, if you looked at the New York Times this morning, they point out that they talk about a black man shot to death by an officer last Tuesday. They don't point out in the story on the front page that the officer who shot him was black.
Yeah.
It doesn't even come up.
And it's gotten completely forgotten that the man who was shot in that case was indeed armed. He did have a gun that was registered to him. He had an ankle holster on. All this stuff goes ignored when it comes out later, after the riots or the protests have died down. We're short on time tonight, you guys. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks,
Megyn.
Up next, why Howard Dean is suggesting that Donald Trump was on drugs last night. Nice. And how the world is reacting.
Our country's in deep trouble. They're taking our jobs. It's very important to me. You're wrong.
So Trump had the nerve to sniffle last night, and now the critics have gone from suggesting that he may have been sick to suggesting he was using drugs. MSNBC contributor and former presidential candidate Howard Dean tweeting out a message that asked, quote, "Notice Trump sniffling all the time? Coke user?" And when Dean was given the chance to clarify his remarks today, here's what he said.
You can't make a diagnosis over the television. I would never do that. But he has some interesting, that is actually a signature of people who use cocaine.
So that's gross. And he's gross. And he just lectured us about Hillary Clinton's health and how, look, she should just take a few days off and take care of that pneumonia. But now suddenly he can't diagnose somebody. I mean, Howie, you tell me, Howard Kurtz is here, how out of line this is.
This is way beneath somebody of Howard Dean's stature. I interviewed him during his presidential campaign when he inspired a lot of young people. To see him resort to the tactics of a smear merchant is just sad. And by the way, what a ludicrous charge. A 70-year-old man who doesn't even drink alcohol is suddenly doing a lot of blow. Dean had a chance to apologize for the tweet, and instead he stooped even lower.
So what is this? Is this another Harry Reid, Mitt Romney pays 0 in taxes, just like trolling Trump?
Yeah, but it's almost too decorous to call it trolling. I mean, he smeared him. And by the way, there's a serious question here. Absolutely, and there's a serious question here for MSNBC. Is the network that went after conservative critics, and I also was critical of those who peddled bogus health rumors about Hillary Clinton. Having done that, is the network willing to tolerate or even condone what Howard Dean said? He's not going to pay any penalty for this, and I didn't really see many in the mainstream press going after this either. It's only like, oh, another charge,
There's no basis. There's no basis for that. And by the way, we all sniffle. It's the fall. I have allergies. I've never done drugs in my life. So there, Howard. He's got to brush up on those medical ethics. Great to see you, Howard
he's
Kurtz.
A doctor as well. Thanks,
and then Howard Dean, not Howard Kurtz. To clarify, the Charlotte cops, they say Keith Scott was found with a gun that had his fingerprints on it. The gun wasn't registered to him, but it had been stolen, and the thief says he sold it to Keith Scott. Thoughts on the debate? At Megyn Kelly on Twitter. See you tomorrow.